It's time. Get your popcorn.
Get your candy.
Get your chicken fingers.
And most of all, get comfortable. Because it's time for Royalcast Live! What's up, everybody? And welcome to the Royalcast Live, the only bi-weekly online variety show that brings you artists, authors, dancers, and the creative community live streamed to your favorite device. I'm Mutalo Olutosin. Some people call me Sweet Lou, and I'll be curating your journey through the Royalcast landscape. Recently, we've seen what we all pray will bring to us the end of the corona protocols. And that makes me happy! We can now truly see the light at the end of the tunnel, America. And it's all thanks to this vaccine. So I've been thinking about the whole process of vaccination, how it works, where did it come from, and who was the genius that invented it? Once I'd asked myself these questions, I was compelled to investigate further. You never really know what you're going to find when you investigate objectively. As I drill down deeper into the subject of where the vaccination process originated, I made the most intriguing discovery. You see, there have been national policies on vaccinations in the UK as far back as 1840. And that's an important linkage because the US exists because of the UK, and vice versa when you consider the world wars. I recall from my grade school studies the name Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine, and I thought for a minute I had the answer. But the question I'd asked was about the process and not about a particular vaccine. So my investigation continued. Then suddenly out of nowhere, right there in plain sight, yet unaccredited in any formal way. You see, in the 1700s, an epidemic of smallpox hit the colonies. That's modern-day New England. Smallpox killed 30% of the people that it hit. By comparison, corona kills less than 10. Fortunately, in 1796, an English gentleman, Edward Jenner, inoculated an 8-year-old boy with some material from a cowpox, and it worked beautifully. I thought, Eureka! But again, I was deflated as I realized that Jenner, although he's considered the father of vaccination, could not possibly be that. The reason Jenner could not be the father of vaccination comes down to one word: Onesimus. Actually, it's more like 3 words: Onesimus, Cotton, Mather. You see, in 1706, Mather was a Puritan minister in colonial Boston, and his church gifted him an enslaved African from Ghana. He called him Onesimus. Now, what does that have to do with vaccination? Well, when the church gave Onesimus to the preacher, he asked if he was immune from smallpox. Onesimus was very intelligent. He said yes and no. And then years later, he explained to him a process that was often used in his village where small amounts of pus from an infected person was rubbed into an open wound of a non-infected person. Hallelujah! I finally found the answer to my original question about the process of vaccination. How does it work? Excretion from the infected person into an uninfected person to control the disease development. Where did it come from? Onesimus, by way of slavery. Who was the genius that invented it in the first place? The Africans, perhaps Ghana. Reverend Mather became a believer, and he used the process. But when he tried to spread it throughout the colonies, he was vilified. The whites bombed his house. They wanted nothing to do with any medical process developed by or for black people in Boston. They ended up losing 14% of their population due to smallpox rather than trust the process. Now, I'm sure Onesimus did not refer to his process as vaccination, inoculation, variolation, or any other kind of nation. But even the blind can see the correlation. In our pilot episode, we made a list of things that black people have already done. I'm adding vaccination to that list. And as happy as we all are to finally have a vaccine, whenever it is your turn to go up and take your shot, I want you to boldly walk up, bare your right or left shoulder, and stick it out there and say, Onesimus! Thank you, brother. Look, friends, things are tough everywhere in the world these days. One can easily find themselves in what seems like the most hopeless of circumstances. The one thing I can tell you for sure is there's always hope. There's always another option. Always. Sometimes hearing the right words is all it takes to set you straight. Here's a message from our Director of Communications. Hey everybody, it's time for the Royal Cast Challenge. This is the time in the show where everybody watching gets to show everybody else how smart they really are. So the challenge works like this. I'll give you a question and everybody will have 48 hours to get their response in. You'll just send your response in by text 470-220-4518. Everyone has a chance to win. Now, everybody's not gonna win, but everybody has a chance to as long as you enter. This week's challenge. This rarely heard early American music style signaled the widespread commercialization of early 19th century music up until the 1930s. The music reflected the styles, rhythms, and melodies from the various ethnic groups, including African Americans. The question to you is, what is it? Is it jazz? Is it blues? Is it ragtime? Is it bluegrass? You have 48 hours to get your answer in.
The thing I really admire about Donald Brown was he was a great composer and player.
To be with this legendary cat, like a contemporary of some very important people, like Kenny and Marlborough, like there was. Yeah, and that's like a legion, really. That's like a real important legion of piano players.
It's really an honor for me to be playing with these people that I really look up to, who've all, some of the most important musicians playing today. Donald Brown, of course.
Our modern masters, you know, and I feel like really honored to have gotten a chance to play with them.
I played with Kenny Garrett. We played with Duke Ellington Orchestra together and Miles, and he introduced me to Donald. Donald is a beautiful soul.
And I met 2 or 3 or 4 wonderful pianists, and 2 of them Victor just named. A fellow named James Williams, who more or less, because he was older and everything, he sort of became my mentor. We became fast friends, and you know, James, he was 4 years older, and he was doing everything I wanted to do. You know, he had his own group. He was writing and arranging for the group, and he had all the hip records, and knew all the slick tunes, and knew all the standards, and he was the guy to watch, you know, and to follow. So I followed him like a puppy, you know. I wanted to do everything he did. And another one of my colleagues, Donald Brown, who's a year older than I, Donald had been, when I met him, he had only been playing piano less than 2 years or so, you know. But he was already, you know, a couple of leaps ahead of me, you know. And he had this immense grasp of harmony. You know, he had a sound about what he was doing that I was trying to get to, but I hadn't been exposed to it. And he was already doing these wonderful things. And I found it amazing. And Donald, he was already composing really fantastic songs, music, you know. He was just composing, and he had an ear, you know, that was unusually attuned to beauty, you know. It seemed like, and he still today is one of the jazz great composers. Unknown as
what's his name again?
Donald Brown.
Donald Brown.
And both of these gentlemen preceded me in the Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers group. That's a little later in the story, but we all kind of found ourselves in New York, and each of us eventually played with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. But Donald, he has a fantastic musical mind. And I always say, Donald hears the beautiful things. And he plays beautifully and he writes beautifully.
What you do. Thank you so much. Once again, have a very nice round of applause on bass, Mr. Essie. And Billy Kilson on drums. Billy Kilson. Tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone. This is Jean Toussaint. On trumpet, flugelhorn, by way of Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Bill Mobley. On vibraphone, the great Steve Nelson. And my name is Donald Brown. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with the one, the only Donald Brown. And Donald and I have been having a conversation, just kind of talking about what's happening in the music world. And I want to introduce to you, for some of you for the first time, the one and only Mr. Donald Brown. Donald, thank you for being here today. And I'm really, really, really excited to have you on the Royal Cast Live.
Thank you, Lou. You know, I'm excited to be here.
Good. I know we've had a lot of interactions over the last few years or so, and so this is really special for me to have an opportunity to actually interview you. Donald, that performance that we've just seen was really, really something else. So let's talk a little bit about that. Your band, the Space-Time All-Stars. Now, they're all truly icons in their own rights. I've seen most of or many of them perform as solos and band leaders, but they're with you today. Now, how do you pull a band like that together with all their competing rehearsals and performance schedules, and not to mention their personalities? Because
well, you know, every guy up there, I'm friends with. Excuse me, and I have a history with, and so that project came about. Reason it's the Space-Time All-Stars is my manager, Xavier Felderos. He owns the label Space-Time Records.
Oh.
And so Jean Toussaint, the tenor player, was recorded for the label. Bill Mobley, the trumpeter, has recorded for the label. And then I've been on the label since its inception. Oh. And so my working trio usually, when I take a band out, is Billy Kilson, drums, and Essie. And so then Steve Nelson, once you hear him, you know, every chance I get to play with him, I do. I mean, he's
special.
He's oh man, I get goosebumps when you say his name. I mean, he's one of the most musical minds out there, but so unassuming, and that's probably why you don't hear about him. But yeah, he's probably on 6 or 7 of my records, maybe more. And I know there have been times I've called him when he's not available, but he's kind of that, you know, this checkmate Charlie that you have on stage that you look over at him and you feel like, okay, everything's cool. And so I think that was the VN Jazz Festival we did. And I think it might have been like around 2008 or 10 or something like that. And I'm bad with dates, but it was we did maybe one rehearsal because guys were coming in from different places. But the good thing is guys kind of sent some of the music ahead of time. So and it was a nice festival. I remember Chick Corea was on the festival. Wallace Roney, I think, was on the festival with his band, Then there was another band of upcoming guys like Walter Smith and Ambrose. I can't think of his last name, the trumpeter.
So can you tell us about what that experience was really like? Say, for example, what was the first day like working with Art Blakey? First day, you kid, I don't know if you came from Memphis or where you came from, but you're seeing Art Blakey for the first time, or Blakey for the first time. What was the best day like? And what were the final days like?
You know, the best days were pretty much every day you got to hit on the bandstand with them. I just can't really remember the music not happening, you know. And, you know, I was blessed and fortunate enough to play with Art Blakey on 2 occasions. The first time was in 1981, and that was the band with Wynton and Branford Marsalis and Billy Pierce and Charles Fambrough. And then while I was teaching at Berklee, Art called me about rejoining the band in 1986. So I rejoined the band, and the band then was Kenny Garrett and Wallace Roney and Jean Toussaint, trombone player Tim Washington, and bassist Peter Washington. Now Tim, man, why am I drawing the blank? Man. Anyway, it'll come back to me later. The trombone is one Tim Washington, but yeah. So you know, it was 2 different occasions, and but the first time was in '81, and it was kind of interesting because when I auditioned, if I remember right, Art wasn't at the audition, which I thought was kind of funny. And but then I think he just asked the guys, "Who did y'all pick?" Because I think it was me and 3 other cats auditioned, and I probably had you know, maybe some advantage in the sense that James being in the band, and I think James had let the guys hear a tape of me playing some of my funk stuff while I was playing all the instruments, and you know, some of them were, you know, impressed with that. But then I think the fact too that I knew, you know, the music. You know, I pretty much knew all the music by memory, and I tell students, you know, they've asked me, well, how did you know you were gonna get the gig with so and so? And I tell them, I said, well, you know, one thing is, you know, you want to flatter somebody, come in there, you know, the music. And that was one of the things, I think my first gig might have been in Montreal. And it was, when I think back to it, there was a video of that gig. And the band, Winston was in the band, but he had taken a leave to go out with Herbie for about 3 months or so. And so Wallace Roney was filling in for him. And so, but I remember after the gig, Art came over and told me, you did a great job. He said, you one of the first cats to play this, you know, play the music without having the music, you know, looking at the music. And and the same thing with Freddie Hubbard, you know, at the time when I played with Freddie, he was really impressed that not only I just knew just so much of his music. I mean, some of the songs that he didn't play much at that time. And so, you know, and then the other thing he was impressed with, that I knew some of his solos, I could play them on the piano. But yeah, so with Art Blakey, it was the first time I got to go out the country. Like, you know, we went to Canada, and then at some point we did like a 6-week tour of Europe, and it was exciting, but it was nerve-wracking for me. in a sense, being up there with those cats like Wynton and Billy Pierce and, you know, Bobby Watson. I mean, these guys got buku's chops, but, you know, Art really dug me, and the cats dug what I was doing. And like I said, that was just a great time to be in the band because Wynton was drawing a lot of attention, you know, getting a lot of attention, you know, worldwide. And then Branford came in the band a few weeks after I joined.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so for a while we had two alto players. I mean, Bobby Watson was in the band at that time. And so But man, it's if you got some specific questions, but all I can tell you, for me, I was in heaven. It's like later I got to play with Joe Henderson and Bobby Hutcherson and Toots Stillman and all kinds of people. But the mountaintops for me still started with Art Blakey.
Yeah.
Mainly because he was there walking the streets with Bird and Monk, and so you right there close to the source.
Yeah.
And so he was. I learned so much, not only from watching him and because that whole year I was with him that time. I'm not exaggerating. I don't know if we rehearsed 4 times or something in a year, and but like I say, you could what it was. Sometimes, occasionally we would learn, and Art would come in and say, what did y'all do? And like that Keystone Corner album, we did. We rehearsed a tune of mine, but for some reason they didn't get on the record. Partly because some of the guys left their music and so on. But like I say, he really encouraged us to write. And but besides Art, man, it's like I learned a lot from a lot of the cats in the band. But Winton was one of the cats that I drew so much inspiration from. Hearing him in the hotel room, practicing his classical music, then practicing his jazz music, and just checking out his work ethic. And him and I would get to the piano a lot, and he had ways of doing things at the piano. And I always would remember when he came back to the band after his tour with Herbie, and I said, man, show us some stuff Herbie showed you. And he showed me this one chord that he said that this is how Herbie avoids F7 sometimes. And it was like an F sharp triad and an F triad kind of stacked. And but once he showed me that one chord, that chord probably appeared in about 15 of my songs or so. And so it just kind of show you how you can just hear one thing and expand it.
Make a meal.
You're open-minded, you can learn from everybody, the bass player, Charles Fambro.
Oh, man, Fambro's better. Wow.
At the time he was married to Stanley Clark's sister. And, but he had a unique way of approaching the bass as well, and his lines and so on. So Bobby, Watson, we were playing he was had written all these great songs that's still a staple in the Jazz Messenger repertoire. But you get an idea from his compositions and the way he built solos, Billy Pierce, and so but like I said, to go to the different countries and interact with different musicians and stuff, to play with Art that time, and like I say, when he called me to join the band, we joined the band in '86. I told him I could do it for the summer, and when school started back, I would have to quit. But Art kept coming up with ways to get me to stay, so I ended up staying about 7 or 8 months or something.
Wow.
But it was fun again. We got to go to Europe, and I wrote that song "New York" for Art, and young cats around New York was talking about it, and then I wrote another song on my first album called "Bad Case of the Booze," and Art's Muslim name was last name was Buhaina, so we call it Boo, and so it's spelled B-U-apostrophe-S instead of B-O-O-Z-E.
Okay.
And so but then, like I say, the title tune on there, "The Early Bird Gets the Short End of the Stick." The title comes from growing up in the Black community. Our parents always taught us, if you get up early enough and you be the first one there, you'll get the job. Right. And so the song is based off the concept. Well, not necessarily. You can be the first one there, but if a white cat comes first time, then you ain't getting that job first. And so that's
reality for you.
The title comes from "The Early Bird Gets the Short End of the Stick."
Beautiful. Good. Retired from teaching at UT Knoxville.
I know you teach private students, but I know you're selective in your students. So what are your keys to developing a superior performance in your students? And part two is, do you teach master classes for the general public?
I'm trying to figure out how to answer this to give you a big picture. But, you know, I started teaching out of my house in the late 70s. I knew enough about jazz and music that people would ask me about teaching them. And at the time, I didn't charge them because I ain't gonna say I didn't know any better. That was just that it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
There was a group, famous group out of Memphis called the Dillers, and it's great musicians. And to this day, they still thank me for helping them learn to play the keyboards and the bass and so on. And so the job at Berklee came about. I was playing. I went up and did a clinic at Berklee, and for Art Blakey reunion thing in 1983. And so while I was in Japan, I was in Japan for 3 months playing with a disco. I think it's our disco band. We were playing disco music, but it was an R&B band. And so while I was there, I got a letter from Berklee asking me would I be interested in teaching there. Even though the band I was playing with had Earth, Wind & Fire was interested in recording them and possibly Motown, but I was the only one in the group at the time that had a bunch of kids. I had 2, maybe 3 kids then, and I was about to lose my house, and so I had to make a decision. Well, do I want to stick it out and see if they're gonna get signed and the record come out, or I take this job at Berklee? So I took the gig at Berklee, and I taught there from '83 to '88, and and so like I say, it was great experience on so many levels. First and foremost, the faculty was who's who of jazz today. From Billy Pierce to trumpet player Tim Higgins and saxophonist Fred Lipsy, who's with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and just all kinds of people there. But for me, the biggest reward was getting to shape students' minds and to help them learn to play this art form. And so like I say, some of the students I was able to help in the development was Cyrus Chestnut.
Cyrus Chestnut.
And I got Cyrus his first professional gig, and it was kind of funny because he was here at my school about 3 years ago, and he just found, after all those years, 30-some years, he had just found out that I was the one recommended him to John Hendricks. He just said that he never knew how he got the gig, but what it was is we went on strike at Berklee, and so Berklee wouldn't let us tour and do anything, as kind of payback to get even with us. And so James had John Hendricks to call me about doing a tour, and Berklee wouldn't let me do it. So John asked me if I had a student I thought could handle the gig, and so I recommended Cyrus. And Cyrus did the gig for I think maybe a couple of years. And when he left, John called me again and asked me if I had a student play as good as Cyrus. And so I recommended Danilo Perez. Danilo's first big gig, and then later he's been with Wayne Shorter for 15 years or more, or whatever. And like I say, Billy Kilson, Javon Jackson, Sam Newsom, a lot of guys I was able to recommend for gigs, and then like I said, they had a good piano faculty there, and so the rewards of teaching,
So your academia is one thing, but now when we start talking master class or what you're doing on an individual with individual students or something that that you've set up? How is that different, or how does that flow?
It's different in the sense that, you know, a one-on-one lesson, private student, you can get more information across, and time is, it should be a factor, but usually, like I say, going back to the days of, man, you know, Berklee, some of the students' lessons were supposed to be 30 minutes and some an hour, and I usually would go an hour and a half. Sometimes an hour, 15 minutes, hour and a half. And so I'd end up running behind. But in terms of, you know, like I've done clinics around the world, but probably most notably when I moved here to Tennessee, Berklee had me to come back. I forgot what I was up there for, but anyway, they had me do a clinic there, and then I did a week residency at the Juilliard School of Music, I think around 2001 or 2, and then I did the Brubeck Institute colony camps in the summer, probably 3 or 4 times, and so there you're dealing with, you know, and you're doing a residency like Juilliard. You know, I would do some individual piano lessons, but then I do ensembles, and then I do a class on composition, a master class on composition, and you know, like I said, when I have the time to get the preparation that I want, then I think it's a really interesting presentation because, you know, I have scores of some of my songs, you know, and I can demonstrate to them how certain songs came about, and then the same thing about improvising, because I think because I always had limited technique, you know, I'm self-taught at the piano, but I practice classical pieces, and I used to practice, so I used to think the more pain was the better, so I developed hand polishing early. And so I think it still kind of made me have to develop the ideas that I had. If I learned a Bud Powell lick, sometimes I couldn't play it, you know, with the vibe that he played on. So, you know, you found another way of playing it.
Yeah. So real statement, huh?
Yeah, and so it's been, you know, some people, you know, tell me what they think I got a unique harmonic approach, but usually when I sit down and show them certain things I do, and they realize, oh man, it's the same thing I do, but with this twist to it. But for beginner students, it probably can sound like something different, but you know, when I do composition classes, I always tell students, well, you know, I never took a composition lesson in my life, and really jazz improvisation lesson, because, you know, like I say, with James, it was never really about me talking to him about improvising. It was more about him turning me on the records, and he would teach me a lot of tunes. And but for improvising, I would just take people's ideas off record, and then and I knew I didn't want to play them verbatim. Or you start figuring out other things you can do with it. But and so the same thing with composing. I tell people I learned to compose by learning other people's songs, and so, you know, I tell people, well, you know, without bragging, you know, I can go to the piano and play you probably 30 to 40 Stevie Wonder songs. You know, I could play you, you know, 15 to 20 Earth, 25 songs, and not only play them, but I can tell you what the horns are doing, what the overdubs are doing, if they use, and what the background vocals are doing, what the strings are doing. And so I tell people, well, that's kind of. Hey, it's Donald Brown. I'll be doing my music career masterclass online. I'll be sharing some of my musical tools for a successful music career. Please join me. To register, click the link, and I'll look forward to seeing you.
And that's our show, everyone. Hope we brought a smile to your face, some groove in your soul, and warmth to your heart. We hope to see you in a couple of weeks when we'll be right back here and we'll do it all again with a whole new show. Again, I'm Sweet Lou Olatosa, along with the Royal Cast Live crew. And thanks for joining Royal Cast Live.